Hey, I'm Meghann Scully, and this is the Limerick Post Show. Coming up in today's show, the big interview is with Chief Economist with the Limerick Chamber, Katrina Cahill, and it's all about Brexit, not one to miss. First up, though, the top stories in Limerick. Aaron Gillan, the Limerick hurler, has been announced as the ambassador for CRY, which is cardiac risk in the young. Also in Limerick, Councillor Sarah Kiley held a meeting and is hoping to open a men's shed in the Janesborough and surrounding areas. First up, though, to our Out and About section, we headed over to 101 to chat to Lenny all about an award that they recently won. We're here in the piano bar of 101 and I'm joined by Lenny, who's the man over the whole thing, and we're here to say a massive congratulations. 2 awards. Tell me about the awards.
Well, sorry. We won Best Bar in Munster on the Monday night in Dublin at the Licensing Awards, and then we won Best Overall Bar in the country, voted for by the people. So it was actually a public vote. So the people in Limerick obviously voted for us.
That must be pretty magical and special to think that the people that go here, the people that frequent here, maybe people that are outside of Limerick, they're the ones who got you these awards. So it's basically your customers that won you this award.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so special for us, is that this isn't a political, it's not 4 judges sitting in a room deciding, sorry about this.
Not all the congratulations text coming in.
It's not 4 people, this was the people in Limerick voted for this. And we beat off competition from the likes of Dublin, which I don't have to tell you the population of Dublin. That's why in the night we were so surprised. We were hoping to win Best Bar in Munster. We were hoping. We didn't think that we'd win Best Bar in Ireland because, like I said, you're competing against the likes of Cork, Dublin, with massive populations. So we were over the moon. We were so shocked in the night. It was just phenomenal. We're still recovering from it.
As I was say, how did you guys celebrate?
Well, strange enough, we couldn't celebrate on the night that much because we had an academy the next day down with James in Middleton. So we had to be down there the next morning for 9 o'clock. So we actually left Dublin that night, got home at 3 o'clock, got up next morning at 6, had to bring 15 of the staff down to Middleton. And we had a 2-day training academy for all our staff in whiskies and stuff like that. Wow. Yeah, so our celebration was more training and evolving more, but we had a bit of whiskey down there. So. Oh,
that sounds like a good celebration to me. Now, you must be so proud of your staff and your team here, like with what they've done with Base, and I suppose the way they run it, and a lot of people comment about that, so the pride must be just bursting.
It's the staff that makes the place. It's the staff that makes 101. Like, they really are the heart and soul of the building. They are, and we're lucky that a lot of staff we've had here, we've had since the day we've opened. And they are they're excellent. We wouldn't be where we are without them. That's why we're constantly training and involving them. Like this training course we did down in Middleton, I think the value of that would have been €2,000 per member staff. Like they got to go down there, they did a whole intense, and we're constantly training them, encouraging them. We want them to be better, but they're excellent. Like their knowledge of spirits, their customer service, it's so proud for them. This award is for them. It's not for us. Like, I mean, this is for they are so happy, and they should be, because we wouldn't be where we are without staff.
Yeah, they absolutely are incredible, and a credit to you. Now, we did talk about it. You started off with the basement, which was basically one bar. Can you tell me what exactly 101 is now?
101 is it's a lot. We started off with the basement and the yard, which is at the back of us. I think it was last November, 12 months ago. Then we evolved up to the terrace and the secret garden. That was last May, I think. Then last November, we ended up Maggie's. So that's kind of our saluting part of the building now, Maggie's. And that's when we kind of pushing the food there. Then we opened up the Piano Bar which we're in, which is a really special space. This is real special. We opened here in December the 20th. And we opened Opium, which would be a late night lounge nightclub. We opened that on the 21st of December. So we're just taking a break now, and just trying to find our feet. But what we're doing now is just marketing is a big part of what we're about. I mean, marketing and service. So now we're just sitting down and we're just getting our thoughts together and trying to be the best we can. And this is part of it.
It's absolutely incredible, and I think the great thing about here is there's somewhere for everyone, and there's always like that. You'll always find something new in here. And speaking of new, is there more plans for development? Is there any more space left to develop?
There's a couple of little spaces, but that's a surprise. Let's put it this way, the whiskey might have something to do with that. Yes, so can't say any more than that at present.
All we can say is watch this space. Lenny from 101, first of all, congratulations for both awards, and thank you so much for chatting to Limerick Post.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a million.
We're here in the Oak and Apple in Adair, and I'm here with Chef Keith Piggott, and we're going to talk about Pigtown. But first of all, since I've walked in here, I've been looking around, admiring the beams and everything. Tell me about this restaurant and the history.
Well, the most recent history obviously is that we've just opened it in April. It's we called it Oak and Apple. A lot of the inspiration for the names actually come from the oak beams that you can see around us. They're kind of the old features, old genuine historic features from the original building. We've heard a lot of stories about what the building was used for. The most interesting is that it was actually a tobacco factory and that cigars were rolled here. But it kind of seeps of history, the old brickwork, the old beams, everything about it it's kind of inspiring for the food as well, like, you know, because you think it's had an interesting past and we want to give it an interesting future, like, you know, so we try to make the menu and the food as quirky as possible. But yeah, it's just a beautiful building. It's lovely to sit down and relax. And people who come here to eat, I think they get that sense of history from it, especially at night time, the lighting and everything. It's just very soft lighting, and you can feel the history of the place, and you can feel that there's something a little bit special about the building itself, like lots of the buildings in Adair, you know.
I have to say, there's one thing about Adair. I've been coming here since I was a very small child, and I also used to go to Clonshire riding horses, and I think then it's always like, it's such a historical place, but it's also very kind of modernised as well. Like growing up, I remember Adair always won tidy towns. It was the town you just couldn't beat no matter what. And then you drive in here and you're like, this is why it's winning tidy towns. It's such a magical little place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. A lot of people put an awful lot of work into that. The Tidy Towns Committee, you know, they're strict. You know, when we put our bins out, we have to get them back in. They put an awful lot of work into it. They're a credit to the town for the amount of work they put in, and there's a reason it's consistently at the top level of the Tidy Towns competition. It's just because all that voluntary work that people put in, and there's a good kind of local business community in Adair as well. And you know, a lot of people work on keeping Adair the way it is. I think a lot of Limerick people sometimes go, oh geez, I'm not going out to Adair, the traffic, you know. Hopefully now that the Ryder Cup has been announced, we'll get our little bypass, and I think that'll actually be the makings of Adair, because I think lots of people come to Adair for Adair anyway. It's not just one of those places that you pass through on the way to Kerry. So I think when it's bypassed, it'll just make it a lot easier for people to get in here, sample, just walk around, soak in the history, eat the food, drink the coffee, you know, and at night maybe drink the wine, eat more food. But Adair it's got that lovely kind of atmosphere about it, and it's only getting better. Like, you know, the food offering out here is amazing, and just that sense of history you get about the whole place. It's like I said, you know, even on the main street there's history, but if you go back off the main streets there's even more history. So it's one of those places that you can come out and potter around for a couple of hours, and actually, you know, whether you're a Limerick person or a tourist, there's always something here for someone to see, you know.
There absolutely is, and I think it's just such a fabulous place. Now, you did mention how the building here inspires the food. Tell me about your own chefing background and how you got inspired by food.
Well, my mum's a chef, so
it's in the blood.
So she never liked cooking at home, so we always had to do the cooking. She'll see that and she'll give out to me. No, my mum's a chef, so food was always huge. My grandmother was massively important in terms of I learned so much about food standing alongside her. There's a dish on here, there's a bacon and cabbage dish on here that centres around the cabbage water and the cooking liquid from the cabbage, and that's all because of my grandmother. So it's a family thing initially, and I spent maybe 15 years working in event management. And when the recession hit in 2009, 2010, I kind of decided to retrain, and I retrained as a chef because it was what I actually always wanted to do. Yeah. And the last 10 years have been a fantastic roller coaster. I trained in Tralee, I worked a lot down in Kerry, in some great restaurants down there, and 2 years ago I moved back to Limerick. Well, actually, I tell a lie, I was working in Limerick for a couple of years, then went back down to Kerry because Kerry shouts. There's a strong place in my heart for Kerry, and I ended up coming back to Limerick 2 years ago, and I came out to Adair working in the Good Room with the intention. Claire Staunton, the owner of the Good Room, was opening a nighttime restaurant, and that's what we're sitting in now. So I see myself here for the foreseeable, and just helping Limerick food discover a new identity and show people that Limerick food is something to be proud of, that we have lots of great producers, we have lots of great chefs, and that we're delivering on a constant basis.
And that's exactly why we're here today as well, is to talk about Pigtown, which of course is fast approaching. It's kicking off the 20th of September, which is Culture Night as well, which is great. But we were discussing earlier that, because I was kind of wondering, why is it called Pigtown? But there's a really, really significant reason why it's called Pigtown.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of those things, people have this inkling that Limerick is associated with the pig. And a lot of the reason is because our city centre was the centre of the pig industry in Ireland. And, you know, back in the early part of the 19th century and late 18th century, it was the pig capital of the world. It was where pigs were processed. And it's just a history that has kind of fallen aside, and Pigtown was that idea of celebrating that history, celebrating what was that Limerick was a significant player in the food industry. So we're celebrating that, but we're trying to contextualise it by celebrating it in the present and kind of telling people what's happening in Limerick right now. That, yeah, we were famous for the pig, this is what we're good at now. So there's loads of different events happening within the week that celebrate the pig, including the pig parade, which is always a good little gig on Culture Night, where we kind of march around the town with some butchers and a couple of bands and a giant pig that we have to kind of put back together every September, but he's surviving well. His nickname is Peppa, but despite that, he's surviving the process. He's a big giant papier-mâché pig. But so the pig parade is the launch of it, and then after that, there's just event after event, all centred around food. And it's not just pigs either. Like I'm doing a veggie barbecue out on New Leaf Urban Farm, and Kevin Wallace is a vegetable grower out there. And this Sunday night, I think Sunday the 29th. It's one of the last events in Pigtown. We're having a veggie barbecue. So it's Pigtown, but we're doing a veggie barbecue which has a vegetarian menu and a vegan menu. No meat on the night. So he's got amazing produce though. He's growing it all out in Ballinity, and we're just going to harvest it that morning, barbecue it all, and have a nice meal with lots of people.
See, Pigtown is for everyone. Now, tell me, what is your kind of favourite event in the calendar?
My favourite, I love the Pigtown Mile, the food mile, where you kind of have a starter in the Strand, have a main course in the next venue, so you move from venue to venue. Tom down in the Strand, Tom Flavin, does a great job with that. He organises it every year, and it's just a nice little social event where people move from, hotel to restaurant and sample, nice fare that's on offer in Limerick. There's a new event this year as well in the East Room. It's a forage and dine, where you go foraging for your food and you have lunch in the East Room with the food that you've picked. And on that foraging note, Teresa Story is doing this thing. It's an urban forage. I did it with her a couple of years ago, and it was one of the best mornings I ever had in Limerick. Basically, she goes picking damsons, blackberries, all sorts of beautiful berries, leaves and edible stuff up the canal bank, which, you wouldn't believe it, but there's actually a feast to be had on the canal bank. And Teresa Story is no better woman from Green Apron inside the milk market, no better woman to show you it. And it's just one of those things. It's on your doorstep and you're thinking, oh wow. So I think I'd love to see people go on that, and it's great for families as well, because kids can eat the berries off the trees, they can eat the damsons off the trees. And September and October is the perfect time to do that, because that's when all the berries are ripe.
Absolutely amazing. I'm just literally, my mouth is watering here just listening to all of this. So I said it does kick off on September 20th and runs all the way until October 25th. So loads of events for families, for adults, for, as I said, non-meat eaters as well. So I think Pigtown is definitely something that has to be checked out by everyone.
Absolutely, and all the details are up on the website, pigtown.ie, and we'll be adding to that as it goes on. But the basics are up there, and we'd love to have you. Like I said, it's starting off on the Friday of Culture Night. And that Pigtown parade is just a great way of just dropping in, joining the parade, walking up and down the streets, no cars to bother you. We pedestrianise the street for Limerick for about 15 or 20 minutes. So maybe some councillors might come along just see how pedestrianisation works on O'Connell Street. So we'd love to see loads of people there on Culture Night, and there's loads of other stuff happening on Culture Night for people to join in. So we'd love to see you there.
Keith Pigott, thank you so much for chatting to the Limerick Post.
Thank you very much.
Earlier in the week, we caught up with musician Senan in Charlie Malone's ahead of his gig. We're here in Charlie Malone's, and I am joined by Senan. How are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you.
Now tell me, where did you travel to be here today?
I'm just living in Clare, so not that far.
What part of Clare are you in?
Just outside Ennis.
Oh, I have to say, I was in Clare last weekend, and it's just one of the most beautiful and inspiring places.
It is. It has its moments. It's great scenery, of course, and cliffs of Moher, etc.
Now, somewhere I read as well is that you found, obviously, I think, great inspiration from was Germany. You were in Berlin for, was it 2 years?
For around 2 years, yeah. I was there, I just wanted to get out of the Irish music scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a change of scenery again. And Berlin is a great place, and I'd heard about it, been told, Berlin it's a lot happening there. I suppose more than anything, it was inspirational as a place. I was gigging here and there, not loads now or anything, but it was really just the lifestyle I found there, just people's way of life, the park culture, and and it wasn't expensive.
I've heard that there's actually kind of an Irish music scene over there. A lot of Irish artists have gone and made Berlin their base and use it to kind of, and that's one thing I heard is because it's cheap living, it's a fun place to live, it's a nice place to live, it's a green place to live, and it's meant to be quite inspiring for music writers.
Yeah, again, inspirational for music writers and inexpensive. There is an Irish music scene, but I think mostly people it's like transitional. People go there for a while and they're gone again, you know. There's a few like names, I'm not going to say names I can't think offhand, but there's a few people like that are doing well out there, like, you know, from the Irish music scene, like, you know. But generally I think a lot of Irish musicians have gone there and just spent maybe a year, in some cases 2 or whatever. Like, I just fell in love with the place, and I just really liked it there. Like, and I kept saying, I better go back because I'm missing out, like, or whatever. But I just felt creation, like, or inspired, and I just couldn't stop writing. Let's say when I was there, you know. And so that was it. Yeah, I just stayed that long,
and now you're back, and you have new music coming out.
And I have new music coming out. Yeah, I have a single coming out next month. Say You'd Like, and I've loads more music written like from there, and since I've come back it's more like that I'm tidying it up, let's say, structuring it, because when I was there I couldn't structure stuff. It was just constant free flow the whole time, you know. It was just so much, like, and it was kind of like, okay, I'll structure this, but you just got to a point, it was just you couldn't, or I couldn't anyway, you know. I just kept writing and writing and writing. Of course I was writing it all down and recording it and that, like, you know, so yeah, I'm preparing it now and I've loads of stuff to work with. And
it must be pretty cool though to go somewhere like Berlin, and then as you said, to get really creative and to kind of have that flow where you're just constantly writing, and then I suppose now that you're back in Clare, it's like, okay, now I sit down and it's like now you put it all in place, and I guess you put it all together.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing. You know, I have quite a lot of the songs now, what were sort of like a couple of verses and a bit of a chorus, but I'm also mishmashing, like, you know, I'm finding one thing from something I'd written and something else from something else, and sorry about that, and yeah, and just bringing it together as songs, like full songs from start to finish.
So where do you find you get your most of your inspiration from? Are you kind of delving deep into your own story, or do you like hear other people's stories, or where do you find that you get your writing from?
It would definitely come from both, you know, like some songs that I'd be writing, I would definitely say it's from myself. Sometimes they are from stories that I hear from other people, or something I might read, see on the news, different things. Combination. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, sometimes the writing isn't about anything particular.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's. I look at it after and I kind of go, what exactly was I writing that about? And I have to put meaning on it. So when I'm singing it, it means something. It has to. I think. And other times I know straight away what it is or what I'm writing about. But yeah, both ways again. Like.
I know, I think it's kind of ways an artist sometimes just kind of come with something, and then sometimes when you least expect it, something that you might write in a couple of minutes turns out to be something that has more meaning, and vice versa. But take us back now to your younger years. Was music always the plan?
It was. I mean, I've gone off to music path though. I've, you know, like we say, went back to college and stuff like that, and have worked and all that. Like, and I just always found myself coming back to music, no matter what. I was just kind of. I just couldn't do anything else. Honestly, you know, you would say, well, look at it. You've just got to do other things as well. But it was kind of, it wasn't really a choice to me or something. Like, it was like. I needed to do it, like, you know, for myself. Like, anything else I did, I just dreaded it and hated it. You know, strong word to use now, I know, but yeah, that's how it was, like, you know. And
here you are, and you're going to play in a gig in here in Charlie's tonight. And can you tell me about the set list? What's in store?
I'll be doing a few new and a few of the older ones as well, like, you know. It'll be all acoustic tonight anyway, you know, so that's mainly this night here anyway, is an acoustic night. So I'm a special guest here tonight is what it is, like, you know. And yeah, it's a really good night here. It's on every Tuesday anyway, like, you know, and people come to play like their new songs, or even people that haven't performed before. It's an opportunity for them to play, you know. Yeah, So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
really, about
no,
the
no,
Billy
I've
Store.
heard it's been great here. It's a good spot. Now tell me, Senan, where can we find your music and what are your social media handles?
Um,
How do you know them?
fairly absent. Well, I'm on YouTube, of course, and the usual Facebook and SoundCloud, and that's pretty much it. I don't really go with Twitter and Instagram and all this. Like, it's just there's so many. I think at the moment, so many different social media outlets. Like, it would be hard as an independent single musician guy, like, just to keep track on it all, like every day, like, you know.
Sorry, it's a tough job in itself. We know, we understand. Senan, you're going to play a song for us now. Tell us what you're going to perform and why.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to play "Say It Like," which is the new single, and that's why, because it's the new single.
Senan, thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thanks a million, Meghann. Thank you. Too many people around that I can't see it all. Try to catch a glimpse and find my way. Turn a corner, I'm walking on the avenue, getting ready for the coming day. Who's in, what's out, we never even talk about it. You don't ever want to play the part. Feeling so high out here it gets so lonely. I felt this way, funeral star. Say it like it was in the beginning, yeah. In the beginning it will be in the end. You say it like it was in the beginning. In the beginning it will be in the end. Our changing ways, our time has come to let it out. Administer the light to keep us low. You turn around and don't tell me what it's all about. Coincidence, but I don't think so. Say it like it, say it like it. Say it like it is, I know. Just say it like it is, I know. Just say it like it is, I know. Our changing ways, our time has come to let it out. Administer the light to keep us low. Say it like it was in the beginning, yeah. In the beginning it will be in the end. You say it like it was in the beginning. In the beginning it will be in the end. You know.
We're here in house and I'm joined by Katrina Cahill, who's Chief Economist with the Limerick Chamber, and we're going to talk about something that I think everyone knows about but doesn't really know about: Brexit. So can you give us what is a simplified version of what exactly is Brexit?
Okay, no pressure. So at a basic level, Brexit is the term we use to refer to the UK's decision to leave the EU. So obviously, as a lot of people would be aware, on the 23rd of June 2016, there was a vote in the UK where they were asked just a basic question of, do you want to leave or do you want to remain? And there was a surprising result in that 52% to 48% in leave, which I don't think the majority of people were expecting that outcome. And obviously that vote took place now over 3 years ago, and a lot has happened in the meantime. And the EU and the UK have been negotiating, and they've come up with what's known as the Withdrawal Agreement. Now, the Withdrawal Agreement, it's important to make it clear that it sets out how the UK will leave the EU, not what happens after they do it.
Okay.
But the problem is that the Withdrawal Agreement, in order for it to come into effect or to be ratified, it has to be voted on by the MPs in Parliament in the UK. And it's gone before them now 3 times, early January, early March, and the 29th of March, which was originally supposed to be exit date, and they extended that now to the 31st of October. But each time it's been shot down.
And I think as well, we all see Theresa May is gone now, Boris Johnson's in. So in the middle of all this, they've got new people coming in, new voices, new opinions. So, I mean, it just seems like one big mess.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. There's been a lot of disruption on the political scene as well, which hasn't helped. But I think, the issue that MPs seem to have with the withdrawal agreement, you can kind of break it down into 3 key areas. The first thing is to do with what's known as the transition period. Okay, so basically that's from the exit date, which is now the 31st of October, up until the 31st of December 2020. That will be known as a transition period. Now, by mutual agreement, they can extend that out to 2022, okay? But within that transition period, nothing will happen. Okay. There will be no significant changes, okay, which is good, because it allows businesses more time to adapt and institutions more time to adapt. But more importantly, it allows the UK and the EU time to decide upon what their future trade relationship is going to look like, right? MPs have an issue with the transition period because what happens is that the UK will have to remain part of a customs union. Okay, and they're basically saying that that's not what was promised. We still have ties where they have to abide by the rules and regulations of the EU, but yet they're not involved in the decision-making process for those rules and regulations. So that's upsetting them. The second thing that they're kind of kicking up about is what's known as the financial settlement. Now, in the media, sometimes that's referred to as the divorce settlement. And simply what that is that the UK has to pay money to the EU for the separation. And the reason for that, it's straightforward. They're during the transition period, right, because they still benefit from the customs union, they have to contribute towards the EU budget. Okay, but from the time that they were members, they've also made commitments under different funding programs, so they have to fulfill those commitments. And also the EU has significant liabilities, particularly around state pensions, that they have to make a contribution to as well. Now, in the withdrawal agreement, it's important to say that there's no figure that has been laid out for that. It hasn't been quantified. And the reason for that is because it depends on a lot of future aspects, like what are exchange rates going to be like, or what is the actual budget figure going to be, so they haven't set it out. Now, it has been estimated by external kind of bodies and researchers that it's somewhere between 35 and 40 billion. Now, the thing, so it sounds significant, but the thing to recognise at the same time is that it's not just a one-way flow, because at the same time, the UK, so let's say institutions like higher education institutions who receive research funding, or other institutions that receive funding under the structural fund or the regional development fund, they'll keep receiving money during that period as well. So there's money flowing in both directions. So ideally what you want is that the net effect of all that to be zero, but whether or not that actually happens, we don't know yet. So obviously MPs in the UK are kind of annoyed that that the UK continues to pay money, but at the same time there's no guarantees about what the future trading relationship is going to look like, or what they're going to get out of that long term. So that caused upset. But the biggest issue, and the one everyone is talking about, is obviously the backstop. Okay. So the backstop is often referred to as an insurance policy. So let's say during that transition period, if no deal is reached, okay, what we want to avoid at all costs is a hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And a key reason for that is that there's concern that if there is a hard border, it could threaten the Good Friday Agreement and could potentially incite troubles again in the north. And nobody wants that. Ireland doesn't want it, the UK don't want it, and the EU don't want it. So the whole aspect is that while they're in the transition period, the whole of the UK remains within the customs unit. So there's no hard border on the island of Ireland. If they can come to an agreement, the backstop will kick in. And what the backstop effectively does is that there will be a border, but it will be a regulatory border down the Irish Sea. So there's still no hard border in the island of Ireland. Now, obviously the idea of a regulatory border down the Irish Sea isn't something a lot of people are in favour of either, but up to now there's no alternative that has been put forward to eliminate the backstop from the withdrawal agreement, even though Boris Johnson is making claims that this can be negotiated and it can be done, but so far there's no good alternative that has come about. So that's why we're in the situation we are today.
Wow, that is very interesting, I have to say. Thank you for making that so much more simplified. I feel like now I've got a grasp on it. First, before we get to the effects it's going to have on the people of Limerick and Irish people, I used to live in London, and obviously it's so easy to fly over and back. You go to Shannon Airport, you go straight through, there's no problems. Is it going to affect our Irish people that live in the UK? Because obviously London and all the UK, there's so many Irish people over there with Irish passports. Do we know yet how the effects is, or what, if it's going to affect us at all?
So what we have, so it's important to point out that for Irish people, our situation is slightly different to, let's say, French nationals or German nationals, because what we have is known as the CTA, so it's a common travel area, and that was an agreement we entered into with the UK before we joined the European Union. So back in May of this year, both governments made a commitment that the common travel area will remain in place whether or not we have a hard Brexit, okay, which is good. So that means that we can continue as we do to travel back and forth for tourism and to work and to live in the UK, and vice versa for UK citizens. Where the slight grey area is that what it doesn't allow for is, let's say you're an Irish person living in London, but you're married to somebody with a French nationality, right? Just because you, under the CTA, are eligible to live and work in the UK does not mean that your spouse or your family are. Okay, so there's kind of complications there around they'll have to apply under the same terms as other nationals elsewhere for being able to stay in the UK.
Okay, wow, that's very interesting and probably answers a lot of questions as to why Irish passports at the moment are pretty backlogged. Now, moving on, so how do you think it's going to affect us in, we'll say here in Limerick? Like, will it affect us all? I know there's a lot of talk about the meat industry and all that. So do you think, like, when Brexit comes in, is it going to affect, like, how will it affect the people of Limerick?
Okay, so straight off the bat, that's difficult to kind of separate the impact of a region or a city in particular from what's going to happen at a national level. Now, we can estimate and guess at this point, but we can't quantify it so far. So it is fair to say that there will be a negative economic impact. Okay, and the ESRI have done work on this, and what they've looked at, and obviously Copenhagen Economics have done a study for the Irish government, and what it's looking like now is that, let's say, if there is an orderly Brexit, so an agreement is made, it's been predicted that output or growth in the economy would be about 2.3% less than if the UK had remained part of the EU. If there is a hard Brexit, that will be 5% less. Okay, so it's a significant difference, but we're being hit either way. A key thing to remember as well is that how that trickles down is if the growth in the economy is slowed down, that will obviously mean less jobs. Okay, so it's been estimated again under the same studies to be somewhere between 45,000 less jobs for an orderly Brexit and over 70,000 for a hard Brexit. Now, what's going to happen in likelihood as well is that the value of the sterling is going to fall, so it's going to depreciate. And what that means for us is that it's more expensive for us to buy things for the UK. So imports are more expensive. But we're kind of being hit from another side as well in the fact that if you have a situation where the competitiveness of our exports is also threatened, there's going to have to be an adjustment of pricing in the economy, just part and parcel of it. And there would be downward pressure on wages. Okay, so we're being hit with the fact that there would be downward pressure on wages as it is, but also our net income in terms of our purchasing power is also going to be hit by the fact that the price of imports are more expensive. Yeah, so so overall, and that would be for across the board nationally. Now, one thing that I do want to highlight, and that's often lost in the debate, is that you need to separate out the national story from the regional story. So we have a problem in Ireland in that we don't have balanced regional development. That's why Project Ireland 2040 was brought in by the government last year, to try and grow the regions in similar manner to the growth we're seeing in Dublin. Okay. So like if you take the period, let's say 2012 to 2017, GDP per capita in Dublin grew by over 7%, whereas if you take the Midwest, where we are here in Limerick, we grew by just 2.3%. Okay, and it's even less if you look at the West. So that's obviously worrying. Brexit will have a greater impact on certain regions because of the sectors that are within those regions. So the best example I could give you there is if you think of the agri-food industry. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of all our exports, we export about 11% of our total exports go to the UK. Now, that's obviously going against what was said in the news by UK officials last week when they claimed that 90% of our exports. That was true decades ago when we were overly dependent upon the UK. But we've changed. We've become hugely globalised. And we've diversified the countries to which we trade. So only 11% of our exports now go to the UK. If we look at agri-food in particular and we break it down, so let's take beef, for example. 50% of exports go to the UK. Okay. If you take cereals, 90% of our exports in cereals go to the UK. Interesting. Yeah, fruit and vegetables, it's about 78%. Okay, so they're the sectors that are going to be most impacted by what's happening. And unfortunately, in the border, the Midlands and the West, we have more significant agri-food industry than, let's say, they have in Dublin in the East, right? And that's where we're going to see the biggest hit, because about maybe 1 in 12 people work in farming in nationally, but it's 1 in 8 if you break it down by the borders and the Midlands and Midwest. So we will definitely see an impact there.
So is the kind of the message, I suppose, really from a local point is to, I know going back to it all, but like to buy local and shop local and keep, what's it, that saying I used to always say is, keep your business in town, keep your town in business. Like, is that going to have to become a major part? Are we all going to make sure that we're all buying locally and buying Irish?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that SMEs, in particular, Indigenous SMEs, are at huge threat. So I think we should always promote a buy local if we can. Yeah. Now, in terms of what businesses can do, they need to look at certain processes. So, for example, in your supply chain, you might not recognise that you actually import part of your inputs from the UK. Okay, so what we've been encouraging businesses over the last 2 years is to get a firm understanding of their supply chain and where all that comes from. We've also been encouraging them to diversify away from the UK. Now, the government have put in supports as well for SMEs where they can receive grants, but the biggest funding support has been through a loan system. Now, it was reported, you might have seen yesterday, that there's only been a 10% uptake in those loans. And that's understandable if you think about it, because there's so much uncertainty. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And in times of uncertainty, people are risk averse and they don't want to take out loans. And then that starts a cycle then, because you have SMEs who don't have the resources to explore things like diversification, and that's where we get into trouble.
I have to say, Katrina, this has been the most interesting chat I've had, and honestly the best one about Brexit. You've just made it so simplified, so thank you so much. But I do have one question. How did you get into the role that you're in, being a chief economist? Like, where did you study, or what brought you into economics in the first place?
So I did my undergrad in economics and sociology in UL, and then I went into the PhD programme and studied economics as well. I've kind of focused on productivity and commercialisation of state-owned enterprise. So public sector stuff is kind of my main area, and transport economics as well, stemming from that. But I think when I got kind of the love for economics was definitely when I was doing my Leaving Cert, actually. Oh. Yeah, because I had a fantastic economics teacher, and it kind of just twigged with me the fact that, you know, even though economics is seen as a difficult subject by a lot of people, you know, we all live it. We live it everyday life, you know, even decisions that we consider to be emotional, like getting married and having children, all come back to economics. Can we afford to get married? Can we afford to have children? You know, so everybody lives it every day, you know, and it was just always an interesting topic to me. So I did the PhD, and at the same time I was tutoring and I was lecturing in UL as well. And then the opportunity to work with the Chamber came up, and I took it. It's a very different environment to working in academia to where I am now. But I love it. The city is going through enormous change at the moment. It's a really exciting time to be involved in it. You know, the growth of the city in the last 5 years, and just the people who are here, the key stakeholders who have driven that growth, the opportunity to work with them and to learn from them is invaluable to me. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
I could stay here chatting to you all day long. I actually feel like I could. I'm learning so much off you. Katrina Cahill, thank you so much for chatting to the Limerick Post.
No problem, I really enjoyed it.
For these stories and so much more, head over to limerickpost.ie/show. I'm Meghann Scully, and this is the Limerick Post Show, keeping Limerick posted.